Thanks to Joe Narciso for joining me. It's Jonscott Turco, and this is the first Dadnormous conversation. One of the reasons Joe is on today is because his production company called Micronormous was the kind of impetus. I thought it was such a clever name and really got me thinking, and it made me laugh and it made me think, and I started to put this into a context of what it's like to be a dad. And so I remember meeting Joe at Fordham in 1988.
Wow. 1988? Can we edit that and say it was like 2008?
Yeah,
2003 or something?
Our kids will have some funny comments about the timelines. But I remember you acting and doing voiceovers. You had a comedy troupe, and I remember driving. I can remember vividly driving up the West Side Highway back in the early 90s, probably. You'll know the dates better than me. I remember hearing a Toys R Us ad.
Yeah.
I remember I said, "That's Joe's voice." My girlfriend at the time, girlfriend at the time, she goes, "What?" I'm like, "That's Joe Narciso's voice." And she's like, "Get out of here." And I remember seeing you like pop up on TV every now and again. It was always like a great source of celebration for all of us. And I know over time and the miracle of Facebook and social media, I know about your obviously your lovely wife of a long time, Charlene, and your 3 daughters, and many funny little intersecting points. And a couple of years ago on the beach in Greece, meeting a couple of people who were speaking English and happened to be someone who was a classmate of your daughters at Muhlenberg. It's just the world is a very
that was unbelievable.
Yeah, crazy place. So the concept of this is for me to speak to fathers, to dads, and to ask a couple of questions and just get some feedback from you and give you some space to talk and just have a dialogue that I feel is so valuable for I think I have a friend, someone I know who's expecting, just found out his wife's expecting. I have someone else I know who has a 2-month-old. And then there's people like us who have slightly older children.
Right.
And I thought it would be such a fun concept to have this dialogue and then to circle back as the kids get older and as we get older in the mix, and to just ask you, do you remember when you first found out you were going to be a father? And that's the first question I'll have you ask, but I'll give you a few moments to introduce yourself if you want and talk a little bit about whatever you feel is important right now.
Well, thanks. It's good to be here with you. It's good to see you again. We, like you said, we stay in touch over social media, but we don't get really a lot of FaceTime anymore. And so I can't believe it was 32 years ago. That's ridiculous. I can't believe we're old enough to have done anything for 32 years, let alone. It just boggles the mind. But so I have 3 daughters. My oldest will be 25 next month. My middle one is 21, and my youngest just turned 12. I've been saying this a lot lately. For some reason, it feels like my older 2 daughters were raised by different people than my 12-year-old is being raised by. I mean, we just in terms of she was 10 years younger than my youngest daughter, my middle daughter now, and 13 years younger than her older sister. My older 2 daughters were raised by 2 young parents, and I also have Parkinson's disease, so that also informs her experience differently than theirs. My oldest daughter remembers me before Parkinson's. I used to coach her little league team, her soccer team. I was the Indian princess, chief, dad. My middle daughter, I was sitting at the Indian princess with her, and they came to see me in shows that I did, and my younger daughter doesn't remember. I was already retired basically from my acting when she was born. So
when you first found out you were expecting your oldest, can you just give us a snapshot of like where you were in your life in the world and
Yep. Yeah. So we got married on November 25th, 1994, and we got pregnant on November 26th, 1994. We literally got pregnant on our wedding night.
oh, wow.
And so we went on our honeymoon, and 3 days into our honeymoon, we were down in Jamaica, and we were on a glass bottom boat trip, and you know, and my wife started getting nauseous, and she's like, I don't think I'm gonna drink anymore. And I was like, you're not drinking very much now. What's the big deal? And she's like, I think I might be pregnant. And I was like, I think you might be crazy. You're not pregnant. And so, you know, we went through the honeymoon, and she wasn't drinking any alcohol at all. And we got home, our apartment was in Brooklyn. Some good friends of ours lived upstairs from us, and our friend went out and got a pregnancy test, and Charlene took the test in her apartment, and called me upstairs, and she was like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, I almost fell down the stairs. I was like, I mean, yesterday I was some kid living in my parents' basement, marrying my high school sweetheart, and I, you know,
And then with that.
yeah, and then a week later, you know, I'm gonna be a father. It was stunning, to say the least.
So when you look back on that now as a slightly older person,
Mm-hmm. Slightly.
what advice would you give yourself then if you can go back and talk to yourself at that moment, you know, those moments leading up to the birth of your first child? What advice would 2020 Joe give to 1994 Joe?
I mean, I guess I would say, you know, I was really scared, and very immature, and Charlene was so excited, and I I think I didn't enjoy the moment. I let the fear ruled my reaction.
Yeah.
You know, and I would say, you know, when we got pregnant with our other two children, it was much more joyful.
Because
And then,
you let yourself just experience the joy of it and not the.
yeah, I think the other thing was I was working on Wall Street, and I was acting at the time.
Right.
And my job on Wall Street was being compromised by my acting, but I wasn't making enough as an actor to support me and Charlene, let alone me, Charlene, and the baby. So I didn't, you know, I was so scared of then losing my job or leaving my job and trying to make it as an actor. And I was just on the precipice of being able to make a living doing what I loved. And I was like, well, I have to give that up to have the day job. And you know, so I mean, I guess it makes sense that I would have that reaction. But
Yeah, and I think part of it too is almost giving ourselves in some way permission to say, you know, you were a kid,
yeah,
you know, like you were your daughter's age, like, you know,
right,
and
yeah,
and it was a different time.
right,
But it's really interesting that you say that, because I think that, you know, the mindset, I think it's an absolutely normal mindset, and I think it's probably true for some people today. When you find out for the first time, no matter how old you are,
mm,
but especially I think when you're younger, you know, you have the day job, literally,
right,
you have, you know, your passion and what you loved, and
right.
you know, someone who knew you, you know, in the distance. I remember driving and hearing your voiceovers on the radio, and it was always just freak us out. And then, we saw the ads on TV coming, and it was so cool. Like everything stopped when we saw Joe. And then you took the plunge, right? Then you did take the plunge. And
Yeah.
you want to talk a little bit about that? How old was your daughter, and were you expecting your second at that point? Like when you?
Yeah, no. I started doing voiceover um, in the spring of '94, I guess.
Okay.
And 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 I got my first big job. I became the voice of Calvin Klein. Um, and that was a month before our wedding. And so I had proof of concept, like I could get a big job. It was, but then it was weeks before I got the next job. So it wasn't like I was making a living doing it. So I hung on to the Deutsche Bank situation, and it was lucky because I was in technology. So we couldn't work during the day for a large part of what we did. We had to stay until 9, 10 o'clock at night, 2, 3 days a week, and on 2 days a week, on change nights, we would be there till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So working from 9 to 5 because the trading floor is open. There wasn't a lot going on.
Time to audition and to.
Yeah. So I would go in the morning, make sure everything was okay, and then I would go out and I would audition 6, 7 times a day. I'd have a booking 3 or 4 times a week, and I was establishing myself in that career, but it took a while.
Right.
So when 9/11 happened, and I should mention, this is just the other side of my father. It was my father. When we got married, my father was perfectly healthy.
Okay.
On Father's Day, and we're doing this day after Father's Day, just coincidentally, in 2020, Father's Day was yesterday. But my father, the day after Father's Day in '95, I guess it was, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so so the guy who I would look to for help and support, so he died the day before our 1 year anniversary, which is the day after Thanksgiving. So he didn't die on Thanksgiving. He didn't die on our 1 year anniversary. He died in the day in between.
And you had a newborn, obviously, at that point.
Right. We had a 3-month-old. She was born 9 months and 5 days after our wedding, and he died the day before our 1 year anniversary. So he did get to meet her, which was special, and also profoundly sad. But so I held on to the Deutsche Bank job for 5 or 6 years, and then 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, I auditioned for this FedEx campaign, and this was in early August. And my brother was getting married in Hawaii, and he invited just me and my family and my mother and my sister, and to go to Hawaii. And I was mad because I was like, I have a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old rather, and a 2-year-old. And I got to take them to Hawaii. Get married in Brooklyn. What's wrong with you? Get married in Jersey. I mean, this is, So I took the first 3-week vacation of my life. I took off from Deutsche Bank. I took off from acting, and I went to Hawaii. When I got back from Hawaii, my agent called me and said that FedEx thing you auditioned for in early August, they're waiting for you. They want you to be in it, but they want to fly you to LA to audition with the other guys they're considering. So I had to then lie to my boss and say that I had strep throat, which turned out to be true. I did have strep throat. It was one of those things. God was like, okay, you want to lie about it? And here's some strep throat for you. So I was back for 2 days And I had to fly to LA. I flew to LA, did the auditions, flew back from LA that night, went back to work the next day. Then they booked me on it for the following Monday, so I had to call in sick again at Deutsche Bank. So
The end was approaching at that
right,
point.
right, exactly. So the FedEx job was the biggest job of my life. I did 15 spots with Steve Carell. So that was huge. But so the day we went out there on Sunday, and Monday we worked. We filmed 3 spots, and we had another 3 spots to do on Tuesday. And Tuesday was 9/11.
Wow. Wow.
So I was in Beverly Hills in the Four Seasons, Beverly Hills, and my phone rings, and it's Charlene crying, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning in LA, obviously. It was or 5:30, whatever it was, and my office was in the World Trade Center. So I went from getting this huge job to my friends and my coworkers all running for their lives. And I've lied to my boss that I'm sick. I'm on the thing. What's up?
Can Julia come in and we can have some ice?
Yeah, but not here. We'll edit that out. All right. So
you went from the wedding to home for a brief time.
Yeah.
To LA with the strep throat that God rewarded you with,
right.
Then being there and getting a call from your wife that 9/11 was happening.
And so we were in technology, so we had to fix we had to get everybody into disaster recovery. And I was like, maybe I should just quit. And my bosses were like, no, just we need you, just just relax, whatever. And then so I came home from doing the FedEx stuff and started working at Deutsche Bank, and then 3 months later they started to look for people to take the separation package, because Deutsche Bank was the most displaced company in 9/11. They're the bankers. They just bought Trust, and Bankers Trust had a huge building across the street from the Trade Center that actually came down. So the decision was kind of made for me.
Okay.
But I was able to, and I spoke with Charlene because I knew I had Parkinson's already. I wasn't diagnosed, but I was getting worse. And the doctor said, no, you're fine. You're just relaxed. You're nervous. You're too young to have Parkinson's. And I was like, yeah, but there's something wrong with me. And they couldn't figure out, they couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. Nobody would diagnose me. But Charlene and I had some very serious decisions to make, because I was not going to be able to be an actor other than voiceovers for very long with Parkinson's. My hand looks like this, and it's not, I knew I wouldn't be able to make a living. I figured as long as I was able to speak English, I'd be able to make a living as an actor doing voiceovers.
Okay.
But Charlene was, and this is where I win, but I have the best wife. She was like, this has been your dream. We'll figure it out. You're making a good living as an actor. We'll be okay. I don't want you to just stay at Deutsche Bank just because you fear that we won't be able to survive. We will be able to survive. So that was very brave on her part, and it took a little convincing, but I did. I left Deutsche Bank, and I spent 9 years as an actor, 16 altogether. And again, the whole thing of being. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm done down here.
It's totally wrong. Again, being a father, I had people who relied on me for everything, and taking that leap of I'm going to be an actor, even though I had already established myself in the business and I had a lot of contacts and was doing very well, it was still terrifying to know that I'd be I'd have no more safety net, and I would, I'd be at the mercy of my talent and my disease. Um,
So that convergence of your biggest job
yeah,
and knowing, although it wasn't diagnosed, that you were starting, where you, I'm sure at that point couldn't imagine like the twists and turns it would present to you, your disease.
right.
And then at that point, what, this is 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
And so you had two kids by then.
Yeah.
And you were, for lack of a more eloquent way of putting it, you're figuring it out.
Yeah.
So your youngest daughter was born in 2008.
Yes.
You had a fairly long time after 9/11 before her birth, before you found out you were having your third. So your second daughter was born in
98.
All this unprecedented things happening. 9/11, which of course, as we all know, was a devastating, tremendously tragic event. We all know people who were lost that day.
Yeah.
And the world itself changed so dramatically at that moment. And then you have the package from Deutsche Bank. You're suspecting, although not diagnosed, that you're sick.
Yeah.
And now you have this drive as a father to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
You did so for several years, and with your two daughters. And can take me to the 2007-ish time frame when you found out about Grace.
So I was trying to make another transition into the production world. And I sold a couple of shows to I sold a sitcom to NBC, a talk show to Spike TV, which I hosted for 3 years, a couple of properties to MSNBC, and one to MSG. And so I was trying to get into production and sort of hedge my bets against the Parkinsons because, I know you'll act physically anymore. So I was in LA. I was going to LA on a Sunday if some meetings are in the week. And Charlene comes down, and my office is in the basement of my house. And she says, "I'm coming with you." And I was like, "I'm leaving in a half hour." She's like, "I'm coming with you." I was like, "Are you going to fly tomorrow?" She said, "No, I just bought a ticket on your flight." I was like, "And how much did it cost to buy a ticket for 2 hours from now?" Yeah. So she flies me to LA, and she spends a week, and she goes back home, and I get home, and she's like, "I have a surprise for you." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "I'm pregnant." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And so we thought, we'd always wanted to have 3 or 4 kids, but after Sophia, we just didn't get pregnant, and we actually thought because of my medication, I was on 19 pills a day, 7 different medications, and we thought the medication is just preventing us from getting pregnant. We're just not going to get pregnant. And so it was a big surprise, but it was really a joyful thing because, again, we had always wanted a big family, a huge family. We wanted a bigger family, and we didn't think that would happen. And so we're very pleasantly surprised we were going to have a third. And
it's amazing. So when you think about the birth of your youngest and where you were in your life and where you were in your thought process and work and it all in totality, and you think back to Joe in 94, so you had 13-14-year variance.
Yeah.
Looking back now, 12 years later, what do you think the most significant differences on where you were not in your approach, but like in how you handled the news and how you handled the, and being the father of 3 at that point?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I was obviously a little more mature, a little more prepared. Also when Gracie was born, things were going very well with the TV world. So I thought, I actually thought I'd be, I mean, we were at NBC with writing a new pilot, and Amy Poehler was going to be a star, and we had a production book, and all this stuff was going to happen. And I thought, well, I'm set. I'm gonna be financially, I'm gonna be set, and professionally, I'm gonna be set. It won't matter that I have Parkinson's, because I can write and I can produce, and I don't have to act, and it'll be great. And so it didn't work out as we would have liked. It was good because we sold things, but then things didn't get produced. And long story short, by the time Gracie was 2 or 3, I guess 2, I had to retire, and so it wasn't so much fear. It was just scrambling to keep our house, to keep our cars. I mean, before, when we filed for disability, for Social Security, it took almost 2 years to get approved. So we fired through our savings, and having 3 kids.
You had, at that point, you had, how old were the kids around then? So you had,
Samantha was 15. Sophie was 12, I guess. And the most heartbreaking thing, when I go down to DC now to lobby for Parkinson's issues, and we go once a year, and you always just tell your personal story. And the story that affected me most as a father, and as a father with Parkinson's, was when I finally had to tell my daughters that I was not going to be acting anymore, and that I was going to be home from now on. I told my middle daughter, what was going on. She went up to her room, and she didn't seem to have a reaction to it. My older daughter was older, so she understood a little bit more. My middle daughter was seemingly unaffected by it, and I didn't think anything. I said, she's young, she just doesn't get it. She'll get it eventually. She comes back downstairs and she says, "Daddy, do I have to get a job to help with the bills around here?" And that will just destroy you as
as a father, as
a father, and as a man. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to well up, but
yeah, it's, listen, I think that what you're speaking about is at the essence of what this is all about. This conversation and the forum is that, I think when we're real about what's happening, and we're real about things that are, in our control, outside of our control, and how do you show up as a father, as a dad, to make your kids feel comfortable, and when they're nervous about it, it's an absolutely normal reaction.
the last thing you want your children to feel is fear.
Yeah.
And have a 10-year-old, however old she was at the time, fear that she's going to need to go to work to get a job at 10, at 9, whatever she was, years old. I mean, that's profound. That's profound emotionally.
Yeah.
Um,
It also shows a lot about, what you had been able to do prior to then, in terms of, it was, as you said, I mean, I think you said your oldest knows, Samantha knew that she knew you before. Sophia probably hasn't, you said, doesn't have much recollection of you too much prior to it.
right.
And, it shows a lot about what you were able to do during that entire time, that despite what you were battling, you were just handling it. You were just trying to handle it in a way that, you said, the last thing we want is for our kids to feel fear, and to try to figure out ways to help us,
Right.
as fathers, as men, as people, who are taking responsibility seriously, and who, so that says a lot about what you have been, what you were as a father, who you are as a father today, that you're your kids didn't know, like, that was the moment where she had to say, wait a second,
Yeah.
this is serious because, because Joe and Charlene were handling it, mom and dad were handling it.
Yeah.
So, when you made that announcement to them, obviously at that point, Gracie is too small to really get, it's cool that dad's home all the time back then.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how, as a dad, like how does that transition, when you look back on it now, what does that mean to you? Like, what was that transition like looking back in retrospect?
It was, in some ways it was great. I was home. I was able to pick them up from school, drive them to school every day, help with projects. As time went, I loved doing what I did as an actor. I loved it. I counted myself amongst the very most fortunate people in the world because I had this somewhat ridiculous dream to be an actor, and I was able to actually do it and make a living and support my family 16 years doing it.
Which again, I know I don't want to move past that reality too quickly because that is a one in several million
Yeah.
reality that you manifest through your passion and talent and hard work. So like, I want to take a moment and pause on that because that's an enormous, in and of itself,
Yeah.
that's an enormous testament to you as a person, to you in the context of being a dad, and in the context of your marriage, obviously the support of your wife. So that's an enormous piece. Like I want to just I wanted to take a moment just to kind of recognize that because it's easy to put that compartment and say, okay, that was then, I retired, and then here's after then. But that's an enormous accomplishment that I know that it has to bring you a source of pride and joy. And as your kids get older, recognizing all you did during that time also has to be a great source of pride and happiness in what you accomplished during that time. And it also probably fueled a lot of what your thoughts were going into retirement.
Yeah. Retirement was a relief on a lot of levels because I started losing jobs. I was the voice of Olive Garden and Stouffer's Lean Cuisine and Aqua Fresh toothpaste and Mercedes Benz and I started losing those campaigns. They didn't know why, but I wasn't able to speak. As it is, I probably sound a little drunk right now, but it's just the way my voice produces itself with the way my mouth moves. And as I get more tired, it starts to slur a little more. So and I had this weird nasal squeak that because my sinuses weren't moving properly, and so it was becoming really hard to do my job. And so initially it was a relief, but then as time went by and I was home more, I got more involved in my church, and I started making movies for church, and I started doing that so to keep myself occupied. But so it was, at first it was good, then it got sad, and the melancholy really took over because I enjoyed what I did, I was good at it, and I wasn't able to do it anymore. And it wasn't through any fault of my own, it was just the disease got me, and it took a while, but eventually, robbed me of my ability to do that. So, but as far as my kids go, and as far as Charlene goes, there's some mourning of that. But I've always been very blessed to have. I've never been depressed, never been a depressive sort of person. I was able to, do all the events at school and be an unofficial PTA member and, sort of, participate to a large degree for a very long time. And that was always good. So both my older daughters, when they were in the church group at our church, wanted me to be a parent leader. So I did that. And I spent a lot of time with them. And now my younger daughter, my youngest daughter, she wants me to lead. And for the past 3 years, I had a very rough 3 years. I'm sure you followed
Sure.
I broke my foot twice. I had a shoulder replacement. Then after I broke my foot twice, I needed a replacement of the shoulder replacement. So I spent from 2016 to 2019 in and out of hospitals, in and out of rehab facilities. I spent 60 days in a rehab facility, trying to walk again. And so, my youngest daughter, she became very protective of me. My older kids were at school. They've always been very protective of me too. But again, they're practically adults now. Late teenagers, early 20s. They're adults. The youngest one became very protective of me. And again, like my middle daughter saying, "Do I need to get a job?" My younger daughter would be like, she'd be yelling at people, "My dad has Parkinson's. Don't." One of our friends was asking me why I was walking a certain way, and Grace was like, "He has Parkinson's. Leave him alone." And I was like, "Gracie, it's okay. They can ask me." It's not. She became very protective of me. And again, you don't want your kids to be protective. You want to protect your kids.
It's what it is. I think my kids are 23 and 21 now, so they're in the range of your older two, obviously. And I think when the kids hit that age where you can remember being their age, and you can remember where we were and when they were coming along.
I was dating their mother. I was dating their mother from. I mean, it's funny because I met Charlene when she was 14 and I was 16. We started dating when she was 15 and I was 17. And my older daughter is almost 10 years older than that.
I think that part of it, and I think certainly not the intention of what you were dealing with and persevering through, but as a dad, I mean, not a lesson you wanted or a message you wanted to necessarily be in the position to share with them, but your persistence and the ability you demonstrated to keep fighting and to keep coming back and to keep trying again, to rise above all the different things. I don't know if there's a better lesson, to teach our kids, is, you didn't ask for this, you didn't do anything wrong. And your job at that point as a dad is to figure out how to keep going forward and to make sure they're okay. And, when they look back on the last, 3 or 4 years and the journey and the struggles that you've all been through and how you, at the end of the day, it's you, right? At the end of the day, it's you addressing what it is with the help of therapy and your family. And it's you in your mind and willing yourself forward, literally, on a day-by-day basis. And I look back from my perspective on this for you as like, it's a critical lesson that you've given your kids on the human spirit and what the commitment of a father and a dad is to continue to fight, to continue to go forward. There are a lot of other options, in terms of mindset and progress that you've made and that you're making. That's a consequence of your will. And I think as dads, a lot of our will and fortitude comes from our commitment to our kids and our families. It's bigger than you, right? It's bigger than just Joe. It's who am I going to be showing up for my kids, and how can I, how can I try to be the best dad I can be, and no matter the circumstance that are being thrown at me.
Yeah.
So, I'm happy you're on the other side of those couple of years.
Yeah.
Happily. And you look now, looking back now, 2020. What can we say about this year thus far? As we look at like this COVID and the pandemic and all the changes in the quarantine and changes in school and work, what do you think as a dad now, that given all you've already accomplished, persevered through, imparted on your kids through your love and your faith and your persistence, what do you feel like this most recent, I'll use the term lesson, can be for us as dads and for our kids and families?
This has been the weirdest, scariest, most frustrating time for the United States since the year I was born, 1968. Yeah. And 68 was all the civil unrest and Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy but there was no quarantine.
Yeah.
There was no 40 million people out of work. There was no George Floyd. Yep. And so we feel very blessed to live in a country where quarantine, the quarantine was for my oldest daughter was going to graduate school, and she went to Montclair State. So she'd been working at Disney World, and she spent a semester working there, and then she got a concussion and she came home, and she went to graduate school, and so she was home. Our middle daughter, again, I'm pretty sure you followed a lot of this stuff. She had some serious struggles over the past couple of years. She was raped multiple times, and by a family member in our home. She couldn't live here for a long time, so we moved into an apartment just 3 blocks away, but still an apartment. Sure. And she bought her own car, and I told her not to do that, and she got herself into some financial situation. So she moved home literally the week before the pandemic started. And we feel very blessed that she was home with us, with me being sick, and Shalene was fighting through some things. Thank God she's gotten good news now. But they wouldn't let us go to the store. Our older daughters would go to the store for us. They were very protective over us. And we feel very, very, very lucky that the 5 of us were under one roof.
It's as weird as it is, to use the, a flip term about it. It was, it gave you an opportunity to really revisit this nuclear that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right, and it shone a light on the fact that you can rely on family. Mm-hmm. That there's no shame in going home if you need to go home. There's no shame in saying, I need help if you need help.
They're critical lessons, right? They're critical lessons that we want our kids to know, that we sometimes have to relearn for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think you've had the opportunity, to use the word, to kind of see many sides of that relationship, with asking for help, for being helpful, for providing, that safety and that safe space to say, I'm here. Mm-hmm. And to have someone take the leap and to see that that's true. You know,
Yeah.
it's true. And if you were to, if you can, um, if you look ahead to like like Gracie's graduation from high school, 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, like if you can imagine, like, what do you want to tell, 56-year-old Joe at that point about now?
Oh no, it's an interesting question. Um, you know, I think again, I said this a little while ago. I've never been a depressive person. I've always been able to enjoy wherever I am for what it is. So when I worked on Wall Street, I wasn't a technology guy. I didn't like doing technology, but I loved the people I was with. I had great friends. I just went 2 weeks before the pandemic. One of my friend's sons got married, and the eight of us who all worked together were all there, and it was like no time had passed. And again, I was terrible technologist, but they enjoyed working with me because I enjoyed working with them, and we had a great time. And obviously I enjoy my time as an actor, but then there's the post acting. So I couldn't do acting, so I started working at church, volunteering at church. I started doing projects there, and I enjoyed that. And since I've been able to get through these past couple of years that were tough, I'm writing again, so I'm enjoying that. And so I would hope that I have some fun things to still be doing at that point. I hope maybe I have a daughter or two married, and maybe a grandchild or two on the way or whatever.
Yeah.
But um, I think if I was able to tell that person something, the 56-year-old me, a 57-year-old me, I'd be like, keep enjoying it, because it'll seem like it was 5 minutes ago that you and I were having this conversation.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And we'll wrap up in a moment, but I think part of my plan for this idea is for us to have this conversation in 5 years,
Yeah.
and for us to, like, look back on these clips of our conversation today and see our journeys as dads, and through the lives of our families and the lives of our kids,
Yeah.
and our own lives, and what we feel uh, are growing, and it's something that we do every day, whether we want to or not, like our growing legacy with our families. Like, what do we want to impart? What are the critical things? What do we learn as we get older? Like, weren't as big a deal as we made them at the time, or vice versa.
Right.
I really appreciate your time. This has been very special for me to hear this level of nuance, and just this. It's easy to see someone in the periphery on social media and say, wow, like, they're obviously dedicated to their family and to their kids, and they're overcoming and pushing through huge setbacks and challenges, and twists that no one saw coming, and find ways to show up and be really, and I have this as a hashtag for this, really be a father first. Like, it's the first you think about it so often. And it's I was explaining to my friends who were talking about having kids years ago, and they were talking about it kind of casually, and I said, it's not a casual.
Right.
I said it's kind of like if you put your hand over your face, like with your fingers spread, like you can still see, but it's right there. You can't see anything ever in life the same way ever again. And it's a great thing.
I tell my friends that had kids much later than we did, I'd be like, you can't understand. You've never loved anything. you've never loved anything the way you're gonna love this child. And they'd be like, oh, shut up. You know what you're talking about. I'm like, you can't explain it. I mean, you can't explain it. The gift of the Parkinson's disease is that I was able to go to every one of my daughter's basketball games, every one of them. As an actor, I could have made the time to do it, but I wouldn't have been successful as an actor. You don't have to show up for things, but then somebody else will take the job away from you. Post my professional life, sure I had struggles with Parkinson's disease, but I get to go to everything. I get to be at everything. I get to participate in everything. And even stuff as silly as my daughter likes to watch Riverdale or Pretty Little Liars. So I watched that with her, even though it's ridiculous TV shows. My other daughter likes The Bachelor and Bachelor Nation and Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise. So I watched that,
That's medal worthy right there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh gosh.
My daughter just moved into her first real apartment after college, and I got her television, and it just came and we put it on. I'm like, what are you watching? She said The Bachelor, and I sent her back like this emoji but I think it's being a dad is such a gift and a privilege, and I say this all the time to my kids. And my son had the funniest comment the other day. He's like, what do you want for Father's Day? And I said, he goes, don't tell me what you always tell us. And I said, honestly, I want to, I haven't seen my kids in over 3 months now.
Right.
It's the longest I've seen them, but I haven't been with them. And I said, I just, want you guys to be happy, and that's all I need. And he goes, Dad, I'm not a kid anymore. I could buy stuff now. It doesn't matter. It's the last thing I need or want from my kids is anything.
Exactly. I mean, you saw my post with the Pop-Tarts and L&B.
The L&B, yeah.
I mean that I would never thought of that as a gift, but my daughter came home on Saturday night. She's like, "Happy Father's Day." I was like, "That's awesome." Are you kidding me? That's perfect. Yeah.
Getting handed a box from L&B is a special moment anytime for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording now, and I really appreciate it, and I want to thank everyone who's watching. Feel free to comment.